Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Anastasia Vanavskaya, and on behalf of Otuda, I would like to welcome you all to the autumn edition of our Travel and Hospitality webinar series. At the summer edition of this webinar, we were talking about the unprecedented nature of the COVID crisis and how something like this had never happened before. While this is still true, many of us are now facing a second COVID-19 wave and have probably had enough time to learn a lesson or two over the summer of 2020. We will, of course, talk about these today, but with a focus on the future, how to make it better and brighter for our respective businesses, with the means we have now and are likely to have during the next few months. Traditionally, for our events, we have a mix of experts representing the private sector, a DMO, and a non-profit global organization, bringing together industry key stakeholders. We are keen to show a balanced, holistic view of the travel and hospitality sector, and our panelists today are truly the best people to do it. Thank you for being with us on this occasion. I will now very briefly introduce each of you and your job titles, but after that, I would like you to say just a few words about yourself, maybe what your responsibilities are, and also what you have been up to at work today on the 4th of November before you joined us for the webinar. So today, we have a pleasure of the company of Janice Cannon, Senior Vice President at Choices Hotels International, Simon Casson, President of Hotel Operations for Europe, Middle East and Africa at Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts, Dimitris Fragakis, I hope he will be able to join us in a moment, Dimitris Fragakis, Secretary General at Greek National Tourism Organization, and Tiffany Misrahi, Vice President of Policy at World Travel and Tourism Council. Janice, shall we start with you?
Great, thank you, Anastasia, and thank you all so much for joining us today for what we hope is going to be an exciting and invigorating conversation. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with the other panelists as well and the industry experts. My name is Janice Cannon. I am the Senior Vice President for Upscale Brands at Choice Hotels International. Upscale Brands includes Cambria Hotels, and it also includes our Ascend Collection, which was the first soft brand in the industry and is also the largest soft brand in the industry today. Anastasia asked me to tell you a little bit, each of us to tell you a little bit about what's happening on November the 4th. You can probably tell by my accent that I am from America, from the US. And so for us today, it's a lot about the presidential election and what the outcome of the presidential election is going to be, and what that's going to mean for our industry, our country, and our world as a whole. And within my roles and responsibilities, which was the other part of the question, it's really about growing our brands and growing our international footprint as well as Choice Hotels. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. Simon?
Thank you, Anastasia. Good morning, afternoon, evening to everyone who I see from all corners of the world have signed in already. So we're really delighted to have you join us. I'm Simon. I guess most importantly, I'm a husband to Danny. I'm a dad to Joshua, Charlotte, and Abigail. I'm also a daddy to our dog Kelly and our two cats as well. But professionally, I'm a lifelong hotelier. I've been I'm in my 32nd year with Four Seasons and look after our hotels in EMEA, which are 41 hotels in 26 different countries. Earlier today, I was on a call with our 41 GMs, so I was delighted to have a personal catch up with them. And then actually just before this call, I came off a global leadership call where we were having an update on our plans for diversity, inclusion, and belonging.
Thank you, Simon. It's good to have you with us. Tiffany?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Great to be here. Great to be with all of you. As Anastasia said, my name is Tiffany. I'm the Vice President of Policy at Wttc. I'm currently based in London, but I'm Swiss, and I've lived in places from the Bahamas to New York to Barcelona. Professionally, I started my career at the International Trade Center in the UN agency, and then I've worked for 8 years at the World Economic Forum, and now at WTTC. At WTTC, my job is to figure out what doesn't work or what could become a problem and come up with solutions and opportunities for the sector. These days, my time is focused on the future of travel and tourism. I'm working on a paper right now on the future of business travel and thinking about how we can ensure both sustainable and inclusive growth going forward and rebuild traveler confidence while removing some of the travel barriers that we're seeing around us.
Fantastic. Thank you all present panelists. We still hope to have Dimitris with us in a few moments. Thank you for your introductions and for allowing us to have a glimpse into your working day. I suppose nothing beats a bit of a candid snapshot. And now I suggest we transit from specific details to strategic outlooks and perspectives. We will start with the question of change. Anyone these days talks about the new normal. What will it be like? Starting from the physical layout of our offices, shops, restaurants, to socially acceptable manners and behaviors. But the new normal asks for a new you, which applies probably even more to businesses than individuals. As a business, you can't enter the new normal and stay relevant if you don't change. So changing business models and strategic approaches is not really a choice for companies, but more of a must. Tiffany, I guess it makes sense to start our conversation with you to get a global perspective on this. What business model transformations have you witnessed across the industry and as a result of the COVID-19 crisis?
So overall, I think we're witnessing a big shift to remote work, for instance, which is expected to continue after the pandemic. We're witnessing an acceleration of contactless and automated solutions, the diversification of revenue sources in the interim, with the possibility of extending them into the future, as well as the outsourcing of certain functions such as data protection. Just to give you two quick examples, one in the attractions sector. So we're seeing attractions rethinking part of their economic model. Theme parks such as Six Flags and Walt Disney are now requiring advanced reservation to address local safety requirement and crowd management. Theme parks, museums, and other attractions are also considering dynamic pricing as solutions to spread demand, where prices would increase with the number of tickets sold at a given day. In contrast, the current travel trends towards flexibility may also encourage businesses to adjust the pricing models for last-minute discounting. We're seeing some interesting changes in operations. Attractions also, for instance, include digital cues and vibrating lanyards that alert you to changes when your people are standing too close to each other. I know that Simon will speak a lot more about hospitality, but in these challenging times, we're also seeing some business seizing opportunities to develop alternative cases for their core products in related sectors. So in the ride-hailing business, such as Uber, they've pivoted to offer grocery delivery on demand. Or in the US, we've seen the Red Roof hotel chain launch its work under one roof day rate, with reduced rates for people looking for a quiet place to work during the day when they've been working from home.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you for the interesting point. Janice, pivoting to the private sector now, what changes in your business approaches have you been implementing?
Well, building on a lot of things that Tiffany said, some of the things that we're seeing longer length of stay, and that's tied directly to the work from home or work from hotel concept. People are looking to get out of the groundhog routine of every day being the same at the kitchen table or the home office. And so hotels are becoming popular destinations for people to have that break. And we're seeing that the average length of stay is increasing as a result of that. We're also seeing the demand for outdoor spaces becoming more and more popular and part of the basic offering or initial offering. even in colder climates, people are looking for spaces where they can get outdoors and again, potentially work for a little while in an outdoor space as well. We also are looking at things like how we can take our existing product and we can find new ancillary or alternative opportunities for revenue. So one of those is using our kitchens as ghost kitchens, where we're using our kitchens potentially to prepare food for other restaurants or other branded type of outlets, but using our kitchen facilities as being a way to do that. And then we also are seeing a rise in alternative lodging because of the extended length of stay. People are looking for longer term solutions and therefore want a little bit more space and a little bit more multifunctionality. And then the last thing I would say is that we're seeing this real craving for nostalgia as we've all spent time with our families, and we've really been able through COVID-19 and the pandemic to have the time to breathe a little bit and reevaluate our priorities and what are the things that matter most. Nostalgia, the longing to be with family and friends, and that being a bigger part of our travel experience, I think is a huge opportunity territory as we think strategically about where we should be playing going forward.
Absolutely. I think the last point resonates with all of us. Simon, would you like to build up on what Janice has just told? What changes to business models, approaches, perspectives are you rolling out at Four Seasons?
Listen, I think the perspectives are shared, far more, unites us across our industry, across all brands than, divides us. And this pandemic has really, been a global event. And we've had many crises before, but they've perhaps been more regional. And so to have a global event like this has certainly had a profound effect on our industry and the people in the industry. For us, we came off great years. 2019 was a great year. None of us would have imagined what we would potentially be facing. We had to close down most of our hotels in the earlier part of the year, reopen the hotel, and be open to operate in a very different way. We changed procedures, changed practices, and to make sure we do safety for our guests. So it's about making people feel safe. It's about making sure that we're able to still extend genuine hospitality, doing it in a way that observes, the safety of our staff and of our guests. So I think the change is profound, but I think as Janice was saying, people yearn for travel, people yearn for connectivity. So I'm also optimistic about the future.
Absolutely. I guess we have no other choice than to be optimistic and to be looking into the future, as I think all of you are saying. I just wanted to check with our attendees whether they can hear us well, because I'm getting some messages that it's not the best. Okay, it looks like everything is fine. I'm not seeing any complaints on this chat feed. By the way, I would like to mention to our attendees that they can submit questions in a Ask a Question section. It's designed especially for you because at the end of the webinar we'll have a session for question and answers. I know you've been a very active audience and we've been receiving many questions in advance. But if you have anything else to ask now, please do. That's your chance. Ask a question. And also there is an option of voting for questions. So if you see the question that you like, please vote. And obviously the most popular questions we will make sure we will put to our panel. Well, moving on, thank you for sharing with us.
Just let me ask, because I'm seeing a few points that people aren't hearing me correctly. I don't know if it would help when I'm talking if you and Janice go on mute, because it might be that you're live also. I don't know if I want to try that now.
I thought I've been hearing some echo. Let's see.
So if you mute yourself, I don't know, is that better for people to be hearing me now? So, sorry ladies, but when I speak, you have to be on mute. You're welcome to challenge and correct at a different time. Thank you, Anastasia. Back to you, and welcome, Dimitri.
I did it.
You did it. Carry on, Anastasia. You can. I will go on mute. Anastasia, you're on mute if you want to carry on.
Are you listening to me now? I don't have a good connection. I don't know. Okay.
Sorry, this technology sometimes doesn't want to unmute us ladies, but I hope it's better now. And we were going to welcome Dimitris, but again something is happening on his side again. Well, we are moving on to the question of cost cutting, because unfortunately the situation develops in a way that all businesses, big and small, have to go through these processes. And so again, Tiffany, over to you. What have you been seeing in these regards across the industry? And especially, what in your view are the implications of cost-cutting measures that companies are seeing now?
Sure. Well, I think it's clear that travel and tourism has been devastated by COVID-19. We came out with research about a week ago, our latest estimates that say that 174 million travel and tourism jobs could be lost by the end of 2020, and 4.7 trillion US dollars in travel and tourism GDP if barriers to global travel remain in place. So I think, across the board, it's been pretty devastating for the whole sector. In terms of cost-cutting measures, I think a lot of businesses have been fighting for their survival. 80% of our sectors are SMEs, but whether businesses are large or small, they've had to make big changes and big cuts to protect their people and to protect their business and the communities in which they operate. I think, from a human perspective, we've seen a lot of furloughs and layoffs for staff. I don't think that any travel and tourism business wanted to, but I think, a lot of businesses have had to go to a virtual standstill and had to put some of their staff on furlough scheme. I think our sector we're a sector for the people, by the people. The sector truly cares about people. And we've seen some businesses work to help employees to find alternative employment through partnership. Some have retrained qualified staff to support other sectors in need, and some have created grants to support staff in need. So to support other sectors in need of skilled workers, for instance, Scandinavian Airline, EasyJet, Virgin Atlantic, among others, have retrained qualified staff to actually join healthcare providers. Similarly, hospitality leaders, including Hilton, Hyatt, Wyndham, IHG, among others, have partnered with major companies around the world that are actively hiring short-term staff to place their furloughed worker. A few implications and thought for the future, hopefully as the sector adapts and pivots and can become even stronger. I think, hopefully it will address issues even better, reskilling, being more agile. But also, I think we've seen the issue of mental health come to the forefront a lot. I think a lot of people around the world, regardless of sector, have really struggled with lockdown. And I think our sectors, among many others, will hopefully address this in an even more meaningful way. We've seen also, and I'll be quick, measures to removing certain amenities and more automation. So many of these changes have been for health and hygiene reasons. So a lot of companies have made changes and that have had cost-cutting implications. So whether it's the removal of in-room magazines, moving to digital check-ins, automated rooms that allows guests to control what happens from their phones, or even digital menus. And finally, we've seen a lot of actually leaders from big hospitality companies and big travel and tourism companies actually forego their whole salaries or part of their salaries to actually support their workforce and be able to keep as many of them on board. And, I can start listing them, but I think, they've been so many, and I think it shows the importance of people to the sector.
Absolutely, Tiffany. The points that you made about protecting the business, protecting the workforce, and agility, I think the driving forces for measures that have to be taken. Janice, flipping to you, what are your measures that you had to go through, and what, no less importantly, what did they teach you?
Exactly starting with what Tiffany said, that is first and foremost the part of our industry and the soul of our business is people. And so how are we protecting our associates and our owners and helping them out through this period of time? Beyond that, when we think about from a guest perspective, what the pandemic has allowed us to do is the pandemic has allowed us to rethink our overall operating model in our hotels and really deliver those things that are most meaningful and relevant for our guests and our customers. So for example, we've always provided in our industry daily housekeeping service because we've always provided daily housekeeping service, across our industry and across our business. But now with COVID, what we're seeing is people want options. Some people want light daily service. Some people don't want anybody coming into their room for a period of days. And then you're faced with things from a tactical perspective, like how do you get trash removed? How do you get the terry out? Those kind of things. So while it seems maybe a small thing, it's actually a big thing that's changing our industry, but more importantly is being led by customer input and by us getting really close to the target guest and having this kind of like platform for new ideation and blue sky thinking that we've not had before. The other thing that I would say is we're doing, down to the GOP level, our gross operating profit level, those costs are being controlled, unfortunately, with things like Tiffany was saying with, furloughs or layoffs or cutbacks based on the low occupancy or low revenues that are currently in place across the globe. But we also are trying to help our owners and franchisees with things that are below GOP down to the EBITDA line, because it's really important that, you got to be able to pay your debt service. You've got to be able to pay the interest on your debt service. You've got to be able to pay your property and real estate taxes. You've got to be able to have your insurance, keep your insurance in place. And so we're really trying to work with our owners and franchisees as well to understand the opportunities that are there and how to have those conversations, those meaningful conversations, whether it's with banking and finance around forbearance or interest deferral, or whether it's with an insurance company about the valuation of your hotel or your asset is less. And so therefore your property insurance should be less, should be, relative to, what those new numbers look like because of the pandemic. So like I said, we're not just working in operations like above from top line to GOP, but really trying to help owners and franchisees as well maintain their assets and hold on to them between GOP and the EBITDA line as well.
Absolutely. We're all in it together, and it's all about working together on solving some of the problems. Simon, over to you. How drastic were the measures, the cost-cutting measures you had to go through, and what did they teach you as a process?
So maybe if I can just ask you and Janice to go on mute, so we try and mitigate the sound problems we've had. Anastasia too. I know your mute button is temperamental today, but it shows that's not on.
Very.
I will carry on. Listen, I think, in principle, cost cutting is not rocket science. It's something we're very used to through the normal cycles of business, and it's about retentions, ratio, whether it's to the GOP or the EBITDA line. And ultimately, what you are reminded very clearly of is that it's all about cash. And it's about the viability of a business. So much as Janice was saying, working very closely with owners, whether it's on, rescheduling debt, or taking, payment holidays, or finding ways that we can assist, by releasing funds that are in FF&E reserves. What's critical, it's not good for us as a management company nor for the owner if a business is losing money in an ongoing sense. It can be weathered for a short period of time, but if a business is not viable in the longer term, it will not stay open, and that, of course, is bad for every one of the stakeholders in the circle. And so many measures taken. Some are, obvious, but making sure that we're making the most of the employees that we have, bringing services that were previously contracted back in-house, going to all our vendor partners and making sure we're driving the best value. Business is always a win-win and everyone has to make a profit. But as our business gets squeezed, so does the elevator contractors, so does the fishmongers, so does the insurance company for some of the reasons that were just alluded to as well. Everyone in the ecosystem has to be committed to the survival of the business. What I've learned, or actually I knew it, but what I've been reminded of is that it's an academic theoretical exercise to cut costs until it involves people. Because on that spreadsheet, when cell C36 has someone's name on it, then it becomes a real person, someone who has a family, someone who has hopes and aspirations and a trust in us as a company. So it weighs very heavily on me as we, and I'm sure every company, has had to make cuts in staffing. It's just an inevitable factor of such a severe pandemic. And how you do that, and the care and empathy and support practically that you show to those employees who you've had to let go, I think becomes critical. At the end of the day, you can't soothe the bitterness of that pill, but you can certainly, by showing empathy, by being genuine, by being straight, by offering practical assistance, whether it's counseling, whether it's help in preparing CVs, whether it's assistance in job searches, I think becomes very important, because there is a business side to it that's real and supports everything else. But the human side of it is incalculable, and not just for the people losing their jobs. It's heavy on my heart. I think of all the opportunities I've had over the long career I've had, and the only impediments to me were, my talent, my preparedness to work hard, my drive, my ability to grow myself and learn. But for a young Simon coming in the industry today, there's not going to be so many jobs available. For a Simon who's a room service manager and he's 25 years old and wants to be a food and beverage director or a restaurant manager, that sort of opportunity funnel is going to narrow, because the businesses certainly over the next 12, 18 months are going to contract.
Thank you, Simon. So true what you have just said. I don't want to sound too sentimental, but jobs come and go, businesses come and go, but people are the ones who stay. As you say, the families, their needs, their well-being, including mental well-being that Tiffany was referring to. And we shouldn't ever overlook this element. And maybe actually it should be one of our priorities, and especially in this industry. And picking up again on what you've said, and the opportunities that are open or not so much open at the moment for the people in this, for the people interested in joining this industry, what would be your advice to those who are thinking, who would like to be part of this sector, but are concerned about what is happening, what is about to happen? What would be your advice? And of course, I would love to hear the opinion of Janice and Tiffany on that too.
Thank you. I think I'm a little more optimistic, perhaps, in that while the funnel might get smaller in some parts of the business, I think the funnel might actually get bigger in other parts of the business. And what I mean by that is technology is going to continue to be more and more important for our industry. So we need to be attracting the best and brightest minds in technology. A lot of us have proprietary systems when it comes to our distribution platforms and even our, what our operating platforms are in hotels. There will be, I think, a question on the go forward, which will be around buy or build. Should you buy it like under a SaaS model, or should you, continue to build it under a proprietary type of model? But I do think, technology will be really important. I think real estate investment is going to continue to be important as liquidity comes back into the markets. This is not the end for our industry. New construction will come back. Conversions will come back. As a matter of fact, I know a lot of our hotels even now, we're using the COVID period to make investments in their hotels so that coming out on the back end of this, they have the best product in the market. So I think that there is a lot of talent out there, but the story that we need to tell is we're going to need top talent to really accelerate and resuscitate our industry as quickly as possible. And I think it's about looking at new roles perhaps that we haven't really looked at as the more traditional roles, which kind of goes back to what I was saying about COVID has given us an opportunity to kind of wipe the slate clean and say, is there a new path? Is there a new process? Is there a new product? Is there, a new way to approach and solve for customer needs?
Yeah, listen, I share optimism. I do believe that, the outlook is going to be challenging for 12 to 18 months, because I think you have a residual and a knock-on, effect. And I think there's a period of restabilization, and catching up has to happen. But listen, I think what I would say to someone wanting to come into the industry is to describe the joy and the excitement that it's given me, and I'm sure to my fellow panelists as well. It's just an amazing business, and it's a business that's a meritocracy, that you rise based on your talent and being better than anyone else for the job you're going to do. It doesn't matter where you went to school or where you grew up or where you're from. It's a meritocracy. There's still some diversity that needs to grow and be better within that. There are some impediments there for sure, but it's one of those rare industries, where you can start from nothing and travel the world and grow your career in an exponential way. So if you love people, if you have a heart for service, and you're passionate about hospitality, then I would say go for it. There will always be periods of time where it's harder to get in. The entry point's not so important versus getting in, and find a company that aligns with your values, whose ethos and culture speaks to you. But get into the industry. It is a fabulous industry, and listen, it's an industry that drives tens of billions of dollars in global revenue, is often under-recognized by government for the revenue generation it has, as well as the employment that it brings. So you're joining something that's global and is very special.
I couldn't have said it better, honestly, Simon. I think, I think it's an incredible sector. We're a sector that is, undervalued. We employ 1 in 10 people on the planet. It's a sector that's actually grown faster than the global economy for 9 consecutive years up to 2019. And I think it will grow once again at a fast rate. I think the reality is, and surveys have shown, people want to travel. People dream of traveling. And I think that once they're able to, they will do so again. And I think this sector actually will adapt. It will pivot. It is incredibly resilient. We did research about a year ago that looked at how people responded to crisis and how the sector responded. And actually, we found that between 2001 and 2018, the average recovery time from a crisis reduced from 26 months to 10 months. And that's both due to how the sector has changed and how it's become more resilient over time, but also how people have changed and how they've become more resilient as human beings. And I think, COVID should definitely not stop anyone from engaging in this incredible sector.
Thank you, Tiffany. I, of course, share your optimism about the prospects of the sector, especially in a few months. But I would like to play a little bit of a devil's advocate here and ask yet another question, flipping it a little bit differently. Are you worried about, because of what is happening and how the industry is affected in a negative way, are you worried about the talent pool that is available to this sector?
I'm not really worried about that because we have a very large talent pool, and we'll have a portion of it is eager and motivated to get back into work. At the same time, we, and I'm sure other fellow companies as well, are using this opportunity to train and to learn through online platforms. And it can be skill-based around revenue management, around elements of leadership, but also self-learning and self-growth. We're hosting, guided meditations and, different outreaches to help with personal growth as well as with general well-being, because there's a huge amount of anxiety is out there in the workforce that, we want to be able to speak to as well. But I never worry, honestly, Anastasia, about a dearth of talent in our industry, because, as I travel around the world and visit our hotels, that's what keeps me motivated and inspires me, is that there's just this latent enthusiasm. There's a love for the industry, and in my experience, a particular love for Four Seasons and what we do, and the particular way that we believe we can best create magical moments for our guests. So I see it out there, and even in these times now, I've been out of Dubai for a while, but I'm back, and so was in our 2 hotels here. And people are so happy to be busy again. We're actually been running 90% this past week in Dubai, which is a great little sign. And people are so happy to be busy and proud to be serving the guests. It's really wonderful to observe.
Thank you, Simon. Your optimism and confidence are infectious, I have to say.
I think that, I think people who work in the sector are passionate about the sector. They care about service. They care about the sector. They love it. I do think, though, and our research has most certainly shown that, in general and in certain contexts, travel and tourism isn't thought as the most attractive sector to go into in the first place. And it's perhaps people or parents will think that it might be better for their children to go into medicine or into law or into banking. And I think there is something we in the future, and this isn't linked to COVID, but also in the past, we can do to better promote our sector and actually show that there are lawyers in the sector, and there are people who do policy, and there are people who do all sorts of job across the board. And so I think we as a whole sector need to do a better job of promoting and showing how great this sector is to broaden that pipeline. But I don't think COVID-19 will change it per se.
Yeah, I agree with Tiffany as well, and Simon
Thank
too.
you, Tiffany.
That it's really important. I think when people think about the hotel business, they only think about, front desk and food and beverage and, maybe some core type of operational type of positions, housekeeping or, front office manager, some of those types of roles. But the industry is so much bigger than that as well. We need corporate strategy. We need business strategy people. We need project managers. We need people that know real estate investment. We need people that know technology. And so I do agree with Tiffany. I think that that's a big opportunity for us as well, is to tell the story of the industry, that the industry is broad and vast. And those people that have a heart for service, as Simon said, and a passion for travel and the care of others, I mean, it's a great place to be. And I don't really, see that changing. As a matter of fact, at Choice Hotels International, we've actually started programs under HBCU, which is Historic Black Colleges and Universities, where we are telling that story very early on now as students arrive in their freshman year, to think about the hotel industry, think about the travel industry as a viable option alongside, being a lawyer or a doctor or, the positions or the careers that Tiffany was naming earlier.
I'm so glad I asked this question because the answers of yours reassured, I think, anyone who had any doubts about the opportunities within this sector or about how much of a talent is available in the sector. I think those who have those doubts now are completely convinced. And since we're talking about continuing our wonderful conversation about human side of the sector, I would like to read out one of the questions we received in advance from our registrants. I'm intentionally going to read it because because the way it was phrased really adds a lot to the question itself. And I will be very happy to hear your answers. People who work in hospitality are passionate people. They are artists, performers, and masters of interaction. How are you protecting the souls and passion of your colleagues in a time where personal interaction is not the same anymore? I know we partly answered this question, but if you have anything else to say, please do. I think it's very beautifully phrased.
I agree. Beautifully said. Whoever asked the question should be on the panel. Bravo. What do we
Good idea.
do? What I think the only thing to do is to be authentic and to be connected. I'm every day speaking to a different hotel, and it can be different groups of employees. If I wasn't on this call now, we have our global spa directors are on a chat, and I was just messaging them saying, I'm sorry, I'm not on the video chat, but I'm doing something else right now. So I think given that we don't have to go to work, a majority are working from home, use any excess time to be humanly connecting. It can be in groups, it can be one-on-ones, it can be business related, it can also be just checking in. Hey, how are you doing today? How are you managing? How are you feeling? And to be authentic, you've got to lower the waterline, because everyone looks up to leadership and thinks that we're omnipotent. But we all have our fears and anxieties too. We hurt and we worry about things. We have parents that maybe are in a concerning situation, or we're not able to travel to see children. Important to share for each of us what we're going through, because that makes it more real and more human. And if we as supposed leadership are sort of going through these things, it's more okay for everyone else too. So for me, how do we overcome these stress and anxieties? Talk about them, connect, be engaged, and do it as much as possible.
Thank you, Simon.
I'd like to build on that a little bit as well too. A couple of things that we're doing, we do what we call Win the Week. And so each week we send out, it's just a little newsletter, a little bulletin that goes out, but it's about individuals in hotels that have had great success during the week. It's about a piece of business that's been won. It's about, occupancy. It's about a new idea. It can be a lot of different things, but it's amazing. We've been doing it for 33 consecutive weeks, and the feedback we get from the hotels and how it allows them to network with one another and celebrate one another and what the accomplishments are really helps to keep people, inspired and keep people enthusiastic about, what's been a very difficult situation. The other thing is we're in our hotels. Like I was in Boston last week, and the reason we're doing that is, you think about it, people in the travel industry, whether you're a flight attendant or whether you're working in a hotel, you are a frontline first responder. It's not just the doctors and the people working in the medical field, but if you're going to your hotel job every day or going to get on an aircraft every day and take care of people and keep them safe and get them from point A to point B, you are a frontline responder and a hero. And so it's really important for us that we go to our hotels, that we connect with our housekeepers, we connect with people working in the laundry, we connect with people at the front desk, and let them know how much we appreciate and how valued they are for the work that they're doing every day in protecting one another, protecting our guests, and also protecting our, the properties themselves.
Fantastic, Janice.
Yeah, I completely agree with both Janice and Simon. I think, it's about, for me, showing humanity, engaging people, being transparent and being honest. I don't think, there's any way around it. I think in terms of people, there's most certainly an element of spending time and providing learning and growth opportunities in this time, especially, if they have less to do, it can be a great opportunity for personal development. And a lot of hospitality companies, a lot of travel and tourism operators, and even destinations and governments have put together programs around that, which is wonderful. We've mentioned this before around well-being and checking in on people, and I think there's definitely that element of addressing mental health, make sure people are okay, showing people that we care, and I think at the same time there are elements around this has been, the last few months have most certainly been an interesting time. I think we have seen that minorities have been disproportionately affected by COVID. And in the US, we've seen the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think, there's a heightened focus on diversity and inclusion. I think a lot of companies are also looking at that and looking at how they can, in this time, also address those issues and become and focus more on them. So I think those are all important issues. I would say the other thing that I've noticed in some really interesting example, some hospitality companies have actually used this downtime to actually help the community. So, I mean, I have one example at the top of my head, but there are hundreds of examples. So IHG, the Intercontinental Hotel Group in London, has, for instance, housed homeless people in London during this time. I know Hilton with American Express has welcomed medical personnel to stay in their hotel as they needed housing. And I think we've seen so many hospitality companies and travel and tourism operators actually reach out to the community and engage, and I think that's provided a lot of meaning and purpose for the people working in the sector.
Thank you, Tiffany. It's indeed very encouraging to see how people in the leadership positions, how seriously they're taking the human element and humanity element of the business. It's really refreshing, and I'm pleased and very happy for your employees. Well, now moving on, let's talk about brand development, something that should never be out of sight of the company leadership as well. We all know examples of how easy it is to dent a brand, immediately resulting in the loss in its value. To restore it might take an immense amount of effort and not always result in a positive outcome. Simon, maybe you could start on this one now. What are the key elements of your brand development strategy today?
Listen, brands are timeless things, and as you mentioned, I think are very fragile. And the value of a brand is not something that can be bought. It's earned. It's reputational, and in the business we're in, it has to be earned on a daily basis. A guest who had a great experience checks out, has no bearing on the next guest that checks in. We're like the theater where the curtain never closes. And so I feel fortunate, to work with a company that has, I think, a very deep well of brand equity. And I think what's critical at this time is not to really be seen to be, enhancing your brand. I think it's about the relationship of trust and integrity with the client. And that trust and integrity is really around their safety, because we want people to travel again, and to encourage them to do that, we have to make sure that we're a safe environment. You almost have to be verified. And our clients are very engaged with us, on this. And we've gone through, a significant process, as has everyone else. We all do it in our own way, but of assessing, what does that mean? What does safe mean? As you adjust procedures, particularly in a luxury environment, when a car pulls up, a brand standard, of course, is to, open the door within 30 seconds, but people don't want you opening their car door and touching it unless you, have a glove on. So how do you change things, but you're still safe? So, we worked closely with Johns Hopkins International, which is, a great teaching medical university hospital in North America. And we created a Lead with Care program where we looked at every aspect and every touch point of what we do and how could we make it safer for our staff, for our guests, and for any third parties who sort of coexist within the ecosystem of a hotel, as well as for, our corporate offices. And it's highly complex because, the operation of a hotel is, tens of thousands of little things every day that happen, and many of those have now had to be adjusted. And I think the greatest brand equity, particularly in the short term going forward, is that the guest trusts that you've taken that seriously. And we ask the guests, we survey every guest that stays with us, and that survey's been adjusted to ask specifically, how did you find our Lead with Care program? Did you feel safe? Is there anything we could have done better? And of course, we're learning things, but at the same time, we get some wonderful feedback through that, and I get direct feedback from guests as well, where they're sharing their stories about how they were nervous to come away with their family. But from the way we contacted them ahead of arrival, every reservation was speaking to ahead of arrival, understanding their needs, explaining to them what might be different, how they feel that it's cocooned and curated from when they get off the plane, that we help them through the airport, into the car, to the hotel, and then we work with them on what would be the best way to service them, but in a way that's safe for them and for us. And I'm incredibly proud of the teams of Four Seasons who've had to pivot very quickly and learn a lot of new skills. And it's a pressure for them to do that while they're worried about their own health and safety. So for me, brand equity going forward, you have what you have, and you of course constantly work to retain and enhance that. But a critical component is going to be the sense of safety and security and trust that you have with the guests.
I 100% agree with you, Simon. I heard the definition of what is happening today, the following definition of what is happening today in the world. Some people say it's health crisis, some say it's economic crisis, and of course both definitions are correct. But there is also such an understanding as crisis of fear. It's exactly to the point of what you were saying. And I guess those companies who will be able to remove that element of fear from their clients will be the winners of tomorrow. Janice, would you like to add something to the brand development question?
Yes, it's a little bit like we basically have three core pillars that we're looking at in terms of brand strategy, how we're thinking about it post-pandemic, or actually, now in the pandemic. The first is safety and security. The second that we're looking at is sustainability. So what is our purpose around our ESG, and what is the relevance to the consumer as it relates to that? So environmental, social, and governance. And then the third bit of it is, of course, making sure that the things that we're doing continue to be valued and relevant based on data analytics and consumer insights. So those are kind of our three core pillars as to how we're addressing it. And if you think about, like Maslow's theory of hierarchy, that's how Maslow's theory of hierarchy is built up as well. We've got to solve for safety and security. Our program is called CTC, which is the commitment to clean. And it's also about moving things out of the back of the house and moving them to the front of the house. And I'll give you an example of that. You used to deep clean your lobby at night because you didn't want it to be an intrusion or a disruption for the guest. Now having somebody in the lobby that's cleaning 24, around the clock, where people can see that, where they're cleaning floors, wiping surfaces, whatever it might be, that's a visual cue that reaffirms to the guest or to the customer that this is a place that takes safety, my personal safety and security, very seriously. So that's one of the things from an operational perspective, in addition to the things that we've all done, whether it's hand sanitizers, whether it's plexiglass partitions at check-in to keep people safe, whether it's individual hand sanitizers in the bathrooms, whether it's how food and beverage is delivered today, those types of things. It's also about the visual cues and how we're communicating to the guest about the safety and security as well in the hotel.
Absolutely. There are so many changes we have to undergo and carry out within the business. that at times it is scary, but on the other hand, it is encouraging, inspirational. It gives a chance to show your best abilities, talents, and skills. When we're discussing changes in business and industry, we shouldn't, of course, forget changed customers, their new expectations, priorities, patterns of behavior, and so on and so forth. Tiffany, could you share with us what travel trends WTTC is seeing now and how the traveler demand is evolving?
Sure. And I could talk about this for hours, so I'll try to keep it as short as I possibly can. I'll give you 7 quick points. So the first is, I think, and these days, travelers are looking for the familiar and the trusted, and they're seeking out authentic experiences and lower risk destinations. The reality is people are quite concerned with getting stuck in a destination or changing policies that would lead them to have to quarantine one way or another. The second thing we're seeing is has been a rise in domestic and regional travel in the short term, so including destinations that are driving distance. I think I'm trying to remember, an Oliver Wyman survey revealed that 58% of travelers said that they would primarily take domestic trips for the rest of 2020. The third thing is that we believe that travelers will be looking for longer and more meaningful experiences. The average length of stay for short-term accommodation has actually increased to 8.5 to 9 days from a previous average of 3.5 to 5 days. And people are also looking for lesser known destinations, which may even be rural or nature-based. The fourth is there's been risk appetite is a factor in demand as people are scared of exposing others. And I think, we're going to see young people travel more quickly and return more quickly to travel. So young family with parents have also shown a propensity to travel internationally in the near future. And we think that travel will be likely kickstarted by the less risk-averse travelers and early adopters, even like adventure travelers. The fifth is, and I know this is a bit operational, but there's going to be a higher demand for fee-free changes and self-service options. I think travelers will want travel providers to provide more flexible options and reassure them of their safety. And they want to know that in a case of emergency, they would be able to return home. Sixth, I think there's definitely going to be an increased focus on safety and security. People want to know what health and safety measures are in place. We've heard both Janice and Simon talk about those. This will be particularly important, I think, for baby boomers who are key to see more stringent health protocols. And in that sense, we're also going to see an accelerated demand for contactless engagement and a more seamless travel experience. People don't want to touch surfaces as much. And finally, because I had to put it in there, I think we're expecting to see an increased focus on sustainability and on the impact of the environment. I think people have been in lockdown time dreaming about nature and wildlife. And research actually does show that people care more about the environment and wildlife and are increasingly excited to spend time in nature. So I expect we'll see that too.
Thank you, Tiffany. These are very interesting trends. Some of them were kind of new to me. Janice, how does your value proposition reflect changes in customer behavior and maybe as well the trends that Tiffany has just mentioned?
Like we talked about length of stay, so we're solving for a longer length of stay for our guests, creating more spaces in the hotel where people can be cocooned, but they can also be part of the public areas as well. It wasn't so long ago we talked about creating these big open spaces. People still want to see what's going on and be part of something, but they want to feel that they're safe in those environments. So how do you do that? Through furniture, different furniture arrangements, through the use of screens to create these cocooning effects where people feel very safe and secure, but yet they still feel, part of something. There are two other things, and I don't know, Tiffany, if you have this in your the trend research, but there's two other things that we're seeing as well. One is that families are recognizing that travel is the great educator. And so with their children being put in virtual environments for education and being homeschooled, learning from home, being able to get out on the road and take their family to experience nature, the way that Tiffany was talking about that, or go see something historic, outdoors, whether it's, go rock climbing or whatever it might be, that travel is the great educator. And so we're seeing that. So we're making sure that how we talk about the destination and where our hotels are located as well has an academic element. So it has an educational element, not just the experiential, but taking it one step deeper to talk about what really, what are those opportunities within that market that you could use that from an educational perspective. And then also younger travelers, I think is the other one that I would add. You're seeing that the first groups of travelers that are willing to get back out on the road and even back into urban city centers are younger travelers. And so what is the offering, or what changes do you need to make that are going to have appeal to a traveler that's willing to travel, but might be slightly more value conscious, but because of where they are in terms of their career pathing?
Thank you, Janice. Simon, would you like to add?
No, because I think Janice said it beautifully and covered pretty much everything I would have said. And I'm conscious we have 7 questions and half an hour, so I will forego my comments and thank Janice for speaking so eloquently.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Actually, the educational element of what Janice has just mentioned, and the educational part to the value proposition, to the new product offering, maybe you're talking about, will go so well with the parents of younger children who, due to the different lockdowns, sometimes are, stuck at home and have to educate their children somehow, but maybe do not have resources, means, understanding of how to do it, or how to do it on daily basis. So the offering like this would be, I think, a great addition to your product line. I'm telling it to you as a mother of a 9-year-old. The schools are still open, but you never know this day and age. Yes, Simon, we've had a fantastic discussion so far. Still a lot of questions on my list and on the list in our Ask a Question session. So maybe we could very quickly answer the question that we had before, which is, what was the most difficult decision for you over this period?
I think probably what I alluded to before was the most difficult decisions, when you need to bring a close, a stop to someone's job, and because it's not just a job in our business, it's a sense of belonging, it's a community, it's a career, it's invested future, dreams and, potential. So the most difficult decision is always that. I mean, frankly, I'm dealing every day with some pretty intense, conversations with lawyers, with owners, with banks, with partners, but they're commercial, and the commercial things are always of a much, they're more clarity to them. You can be more functional about them. They may be a bit more complex, but it's the decisions that, involve people. And, even that, I have an employee that was let go who worked 15 years ago, and I hired him in person in Manila, and he's saying, "Mr. Simon, remember the day you hired me?" And, that's heartbreaking. And, our commitment is to bring those great people back as soon as we can, and a focus on, giving first priority to people that lost jobs, to rehire those, great employees with jobs back again. But for me, nothing comes close to that. The rest of it, it's business. We've all been in business a long time. It's not our first crisis that we've dealt with, but the human side of it is what keeps me up at night.
Thank you, Janice.
I absolutely support what Simon said. That has been by far the most difficult thing for me, I would say, my entire career, because what the pandemic did is it washed over us like a massive wave, like a tidal wave, and changed our business, and we had to make those difficult decisions, and they weren't performance-based decisions. That's what was, Q1 of this year was fantastic for our industry, and so to have to make those difficult decisions for, about people is by far the hardest thing. And I remember one of my very first general managers, Jorg Lapuner, he said to me, and I never forgot it, he said, Janice, he said, it's really important how you bring people in, on board, but if you make a mistake, you've got time to correct it and do the right thing in most cases. But when people leave, you need to make sure that they leave whole, feeling okay. And because you may not ever get that opportunity to be able to lift those people up again. And so that's really what stuck with me through this period in time. And that I agree with Simon is what has made it so incredibly difficult.
Absolutely. This advice, I guess, is something for us to remember. Well, in a similar way as Simon, cautious about our timing and the questions we have to answer, I'd like to proceed to the questions that were submitted during the registration process and now. And I have to say, the most popular question that we received was the one about the industry focused. I will read out now just a few of them with a view of you, our panelists, answering it in a way you feel the most comfortable with, because there are different elements and different facets of how you can tackle this question. So here are a few variations. When will the hospitality industry be back to the same level as 2019? What are the expectations for the hospitality industry after COVID? What are the forecasts for the tourism market in the next 3 years? What is your expectation for 2021 in terms of the global leisure travel market? So as you can hear, there are different takes on it. Choose the one that appeals to you the most. Who would like to start?
Okay. Yeah, maybe I can start, and maybe I won't answer it the way people wish, just because I find that these days forecasts are always wrong. We've been, since the start of the crisis, we've done multiple forecasts. Literally, I think we've done 4 forecasts this year, and we keep adapting it because the situation keeps changing rapidly. What I can tell you, and I think the forecast that we see coming up near, so to the end of the year, is the ones that are most accurate and where I feel strongest in terms of what I can share. So according to our latest research, at the moment, 142 million jobs have been lost, and that's $3.8 trillion loss for the sector. What we do estimate, and I think we're pretty confident about, is that by the end of the year, if there are no improvements, 174 million jobs will be lost and $4.7 trillion in travel and tourism GDP. That's a reduction of 53% from 2019. Our hope is most certainly for a V-shaped recovery rather than a U-shaped recovery. So, we hope that countries will collaborate, they'll work together. I think, it will collaborate with the private sector. We've seen the private sector take so many measures to be able to enable the sector's recovery. And I think, there are a lot of elements around public-private cooperation, around testing. A lot will also depend on whether a vaccine becomes available to help accelerate the recovery. But it will also, require nations to remove barriers such as quarantines. I think people will be a lot more cautious as policies shift from day to day in terms of booking, particularly international holidays. I've read so many different forecasts for the speed of the recovery, but I think that I've heard 2022, 2023, 2024, some extremely optimistic 2021, but I think regardless of the speed, I think that one way or another we will be on the road to recovery in 2021. Although, you know, certain specific figures, I think, are just speculation at this point.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's for sure no one can predict the future. And I think I've never had such a tough time in predicting what's going to happen next week. We're forecasting daily in most hotels, and we're going through budgets for 2021. And the budgets we did 2 weeks ago for European cities for 2021 are now already seeming a bit obsolete. So no one can predict it exactly, but we know a couple of things. One, that it's going to be different. But secondly, that it's going to be rooted in what we know today. You know, the best indicator for the future is the past and what has actually happened. That's the only real thing that we have. And the past indicates a tremendous thirst for travel, a desire to explore and experience, as has been said by my fellow panelists in different ways. And so, you know, it's a question then of timing. And so we can only look at, you know, triggers that might affect that timing, a vaccine being one. Probably not good to get in the whole vax conversation, but, you know, a vaccine, if it is, you know, effective and is, you know, globally rolled out, would be, you know, certainly a trigger that would affect the pace of return to normalcy. You know, I would say you know, we have a lot of statisticians, I'm sure, in the audience. You know, Jan, who's I saw on the chats listening, used to be a revenue manager with us many years ago. You know, what we were initially thinking is 2021, probably around 30% less than 2019 actuals. But with outliers to that. I mean, we have hotels this summer that did very well in Athens, in Hampshire, in the English countryside, you know, in Istanbul. There are bright spots. In terms of timing, you know, I believe that it's going to continue to be very tough through the first half of next year. I do believe it will be dependent on a vaccine. And I think we will go through a process of, you know, sort of staggered recovery, but it will be regionalized. Our China hotels have recovered. They're back pretty much to normal. So it's going to be regionalized. It's going to be depending on how the pandemic, you know, continues to develop. But if I was saying a broad sense, I would say overall year 30% less than 2019. Very challenging Q1 and Q2, but from H2 onwards, a recovery back to 2022, seeing what we would consider broadly globally as more normalized business levels.
Thank you, Simon. Janice, would you like to add anything?
Yes, building on what Simon said, a lot of the forecasts here in the U.S., whether it's CBRE or Smith Travel Research, they're showing it's probably going to be 2023. And the reason for that is corporate travel, business travel is not anticipated to return until Q3 next year, 2021. It's when it would start. And then, of course, it would take some time for that to ramp up. The other thing is convention business, big group and convention business, which is off the books and has been canceled in many markets for an undesignated period of time. Once they start rebooking, it will probably be 2 to 3 years before those big conventions, you know, are back in market and are actualized within a particular location. So that's why a lot of the forecasts that we see are saying it's going to be more 2023, because the leisure travel, as we all know, is extending and actually growing. We are seeing revenue grow because of the extension of the average length of stay. So people are staying longer when they come. But then business travel being slower to recover. I just saw, I don't know if you all saw it or not, but Amazon saved $1 billion in business travel since the start of the pandemic. And so there is a lot of conversation now about, will business travel ever come back the way that it did? It may be that there's more revenue, but it may be because people are coming into headquarter locations and staying longer versus the 1 to 2 night frequency of stays that they used to have. So very optimistic about business travel and that it will return, but do believe that it's going to look a little different. and think that before we have all of our market mix drivers, demand drivers back, it's probably going to be 2023.
Thank you, Janice. Now looking at the questions submitted during the discussion, I'm actually very pleased with the fact that throughout the discussion we covered most of the questions that have been asked, but I will put to Janice and Simon the second most popular question, and I will read it out to you. Will upscale brands benefit from mid-scale travelers shopping up, or will upscale hold their pricing and not affect mid-scale and economy brands? Maybe very quick answers to that, please.
I know Simon has been talking about revenue management, so I appreciate that very much. Yield is going to be more important than ever before. And what we learned through some of the other crisis situations we've had, whether it was the Great Recession being like the most recent, what we have learned is that if you drop rate to just drive occupancy, the margins aren't there, and it's very difficult to dig out when business does return because of the change in the value proposition. So our belief is we do already see it within, because we have a variety of brands, 13 different brands within our portfolio of brands. We do see mid-scale, upper mid-scale travelers that are going up to upscale and staying at upscale, but we're not diluting our pricing at this point in time. Where our revenue management approach is, we are doing some promotional type of rates, but for the most part, we are trying to be very conscious that we don't create a race to the bottom where the whole industry just kind of, drops their rates, and then it's a race to the bottom and very difficult to dig out after that.
Would you agree with that, Simon?
Yeah. I think as a company, Four Seasons has been a consistent advocate for driving rate and the value of rent. Listen, the best way we can protect jobs and ensure we have a vibrant industry going forward is to make sure that the businesses are profitable. And driving rate is the revenue engine of the hotel. Listen, the experience isn't any less valuable today than it was 6 months ago, and pricing anyway now is dynamic. Prices change daily based on demand, based on time of year, but it's a foolhardy practice to think that you can buy yourself out of a crisis by lowering rates. We've seen time and time again that you don't get it back. You devalue your product in that market over a long period of time. And so, I advocate believing in the value of the product, believing in the service that's offered, of course, being competitive, and of course, looking at other ways to add value without disintegrating rate.
These are very articulate answers, I think. As we are coming to the end of our webinar, I would like to put to you maybe the most optimistic question. Imagine that in very, very near future, you wake up to the news that the COVID-19 is over. What will be the first thing you do in your professional life and in your personal life?
I'm happy to go ahead. Firstly, that would be a wonderful thing to wake up to. I was waking up this morning to see who's going to be the new president of America, but I'll be waking up probably each of the next few mornings, to find that answer. In terms, professionally, of course, look to, quickly assess what does that mean, for the business. We have well-developed plans for a quick pivot and ramp up for recovery, anticipating return of volumes, making sure the hotels are prepared from a human capital perspective, as well as physically. I think also professionally, I would try and not get sucked into that moment. I would try and find some space and time to consider what have I learned this past year. because the huge value of learning that comes in adversity is quickly lost. You're like, oh, it's over, and you carry on. But there's diamonds in there, and there are efficiencies and ways of working that are just going to make sense going forward. So I would want to make sure for myself and my executive team that's looking after, the region, like what went well, what did we learn, what is a value that we don't want to just lose by rushing forwards. On a personal level, I'd get on a plane to see my wife, who's living in a different country at the moment, and then I'd throw her in the plane, and then I'd go to England and hug my kids and get a hold of them. Then I travel to my parents, who are also in the UK, and get everyone together and listen. We miss that closeness of having the people we most love around us. I've been fortunate, I was able to. I left Dubai for a while and spent several months in Europe, so I was able to be a bit closer. But I've also had long periods of absence, so. The first thing I would do is get a hold of those people who I love and are so meaningful to me and who've supported me incredibly through what's been a tough time to be a leader as well.
What a wonderful plan, Simon. I'm with you on it.
Yeah, I think I'll do something similar. I think I'll jump on a plane to Miami, see my sister, my amazing niece and nephew, like you, give them a huge hug. I haven't seen them in a year at this point with what's happening with the US, the inability to travel to the US. Professionally, I might take a holiday. It's been, I think, for everybody, a pretty intense year. And like Simon, hopefully take the time to reflect on the year we've had. And I think then it's about how do you make sure that we make the most out of, turn lemon in lemonade and really listen, learn, and turn this crisis into an opportunity to become even better as a sector, and quickly remove all the travel barriers and advocate for that. So a lot to do, but like Simon said, I think really important to take the time, breathe, and reflect.
Perfect.
And I would do the same. I do think, though, I would, as part of my first airplane, I would be kind of like our presidential candidates have been when they were stumping before the election and going to 5 and 6 cities a day. I think I'd want to hug as many general managers as I possibly could, throw my arms around them and tell them thank you and how much I appreciate their leadership and how they were able to hold firm and be steadfast and exhibit just such incredible courage and leadership during such a very difficult time. And then what Simon said, and Tiffany as well, I agree with that. I think it's very important that we archive the key learnings for historical reference, because it may not be COVID-19, but we do know that COVID-19, which was something we never dreamed of, happened. And so it could potentially happen again in the future in a different format. And so archiving those learnings for historical reference, I think, are really important. Like, how do you suspend hotel operations if it becomes a requirement? If a market requires you to shut down, how do you go about that process? So I think that those things are going to be really important. And then for me personally, I would have a big barbecue at my house. My house is normally the place where family and friends come, and we roast a pig and have a big barbecue, and everybody just gets together, and we'd sit out under the trees and just enjoy one another's company and talk about what's to come and not necessarily where we've all been.
Splendid. We are so similar being human. On these very positive notes, I would like to draw today's webinar to a close. I will do it by quoting Aristotle Onassis. We must free ourselves of the hope that the sea will ever rest. We must learn to sail in high winds. I hope you will agree that our panelists today have clearly demonstrated that this is very much possible, and I'm very pleased they were available and were able to share their learnings with us. I would like to thank each and every one of them for the pleasure of their company and for the value they brought to this meeting today. And of course, a big thank you to all attendees for finding the time to tune in and to generating the most interesting questions and comments. I'm wishing you all the best, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again at our future events.
Stay strong. Take care.
Bye.
I'm sure we will. Thank you.